Hello and welcome to another episode of the Nittany Gritty. I am John Sauber, Penn State men's basketball writer at the Center Daily Times. He is Penn State men's basketball legend Tim Frazier. Tim, how are we doing?
Man, doing well. In the month of March, so it's March Madness time. It's time for
That's right.
basketball to take it up to another notch.
Yeah, and for Penn State, that might mean the NIT at this point. We'll see. I think they need to win some games here in the Big Ten tournament to make that come true at this point. After a week that, quite frankly, you and I should have seen coming. Right? Like this is just how this team does it. It rattles off a couple in a row, it loses two or three in a row, it wins two or three in a row, and then it just oscillates back and forth between the two things. I mean, this was a little too predictable. I think that this was going to happen with this team. Of course, like I was saying pre-pod, I'm sure that they'll either beat Maryland and then go on a run in the Big Ten tournament, or lose to Maryland and then go on a run in the Big Ten tournament, because that's what this team does. It is, I think, interesting. We can probably start here that this is ending kind of where we thought it would, right? Like fighting for the NIT, more Big Ten wins than I think I thought they would have. They have their 8-11, have a chance to finish 9-11. Obviously, 8-12 being the floor there in the conference, but I think for all of the ups and downs and the weirdness of this season, it's pretty well on track with where I think you and I probably thought they were going to finish at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, when we first started a couple months ago, we were up in the air. We didn't know how Coach Rhodes, his system was gonna translate into the Big Ten, how the transfers are gonna play in the Big Ten, how the former players, how they were gonna be able to just adjust to the Big Ten as far as the style of play. And again, they surprised me. They surprised a lot of people. I think when you look at this schedule and what they've been through, man, they have. I thought they would have had maybe one or two quality wins, knocking off some Big Ten big opponents. But if you look at them, man, they got some pretty quality wins along the way. And again, if we touch about it, in a couple of episodes ago about that early non-conference and how that's going to sting at the end of the year, man. That tournament where they lost the 3 games and that Bucknell loss as well. Was it Bucknell?
Yeah, it's Bucknell.
Yeah, that Bucknell loss as well. Like those things are going to sting for them at the end, and it just hurts, what I mean, because this team has battled all year, like you said. They're so predictable. When they lose 2, they win 2, they lose 3, they win 3, they lose 2, they win 1. Like that was the last 10 or so games, and it's just it's exciting to see when they win, and when they lose, it's like, oh man, they were so close, and then right there's a couple mistakes here, a couple lackadaisical things that happen there and here and there, and it just, this team has the potential to be something very, very special, and they got one more game to be able to show it before heading into tournament time.
Yeah, and I think, I hate to. I did this the last time they lost 3 in a row, and then they won 3 in a row. So who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to be wrong on this. But I think this is a good time to look at what this means for the future, right? Like what the play style translating means and everything. And we've seen that, the pressure is helpful. Like the ball pressure is helpful. I don't know if they can do it as frequently as they did in the past. And I think we're learning that this year too, that there's got to be more of a blend. But at the same time, you look at the personnel they have, it doesn't necessarily fit a team that is looking to pressure full court all game. You know what I mean? Like it's a good group of guys like that. Or honestly, it's an above average group of guys for stuff like that, especially with Ace and Nick Kern and Puff Johnson. But it's not a perfect group for that style of play. And that's why I think we're seeing bits and pieces of what it's going to look like moving forward, right? This isn't necessarily the full picture of, okay, you can't, these are the specific instances and when you can do it and when you can't. It's kind of, all right, you have an idea of it, but it's not a full, fully fleshed out thought yet of like what this is going to look like and how they're going to execute the press and their defensive style moving forward. And I think, on some level, you probably were hoping to have that answer this year, right? You were hoping to know like what it would look like and how it would do. And it's tough when you're rebuilding an entire roster, right? Like this Mike Rhodes and his staff had to build a new team out of the transfer portal essentially. And they did that. And, to the best of their ability, obviously, but at the end of the day, it doesn't fit exactly what he wants to do. And part of me wonders if he could go back, would Mike Rhodes lean more on youth, like freshmen, sophomores, and, guys coming out of high school in the portal more than he did some of the older guys that he took, because then you can kind of build that culture, right? You can get the guys that are going to be a fit in the culture rather than trying to mix and match and not hope for the best, but plan for the best in a way that maybe you wouldn't plan for if you had your ideal team kind of in place.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you, John, on that. And you're right. I don't know. That would be curious for him to see. But I do think that when you go into year one, knowing that the expectations are pretty lower, if I'm Coach Rhodes, I'm swinging for the fences. I'm gonna go get older guys. I'm gonna go get guys from North Carolina. I'm gonna go get the guys that are from other Power 5 conferences to be able to see if they can just adjust and be able to help it out. Because I have a couple years to be able to find the guys that I need that I might be through high school. So I think that you go get those dudes. You go get those guys that are more experienced, especially because now you don't necessarily have to teach, as far as like, hey, this is college basketball. The rules, the health side of the, because that's not all taught in high school basketball. I know just now it's more when the basketball of high school and AAU is more just pickup. We're trying to figure out who can do what, Oh, he has the skills to do that. He shoots this amount of points. He scores this amount of points. He shoots this amount from three. I don't know if necessarily the knowledge of the game is being taught to be able to say, hey, this is what the team ball is going to be needed to when we're guarding Zach Edey, when we're doubling in the post, and then the next person we all have to rotate. So I think when in year one you go get the guys that are knowledgeable of the game of college basketball and what's going to be at hand, because I bring up Zach Edey again. You don't see that in high school, or if you do, you don't see it on a nightly basis. You don't see the big man that you see in a nightly basis. You don't see the pros. These are, some in the Big Ten or a couple first round draft picks. You don't see those in high school, rarely. So to be able to go get those guys that have been in the ACC, that have been in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, or the SEC as well, try to go get some guys from there in the transfer portal. I think that would have been my move for this year going into it.
I think if you want me to go on a rant, get me going about the EYBL and the shoe circuits and the way the basketball is played, because I covered recruiting for a bit. That's not team basketball. But I won't go on that rant. I'll save everyone the time.
Yeah, but I'll say my piece on it to be like, I don't want to act like I watch it, because I don't. As that's 20-some years ago. I wouldn't if I were you. 25 years ago of me playing high school basketball, I think. So I haven't been to I remember when there was three shoe teams. It was Nike, Adidas, and
Under Armour
and Reebok. That's how old I am. Okay, it was Nike, Adidas, and Reebok.
Man, you are old.
So you had those three teams, and those were the three main cities, main AAU teams in your city. And then they had a Nike tournament in Vegas. They had an Adidas tournament in Vegas. They had Vegas. You know what I mean? Those were the things. Yeah. They came in, and you didn't travel. There was an EYBL where all these Nike teams play against each other. So I have no idea anything about it, but I just do know, just from seeing, just being a social media where I see this type of stuff, there's not necessarily the team ball compared to. It's more like, hey, we have a certain guy, let's highlight him and let's make him the focus of what he's going to do. Because if he goes big, again, we're going to get more people like that to feed into our program.
Well, and part of it too is like the feeling of high school kids that they got to get theirs, right? And when you're that young, you kind of lack perspective, right? Like, guys aren't coming in and playing like Nick Kern right away because they don't, you know what I mean? They want the ball in their hands. They're not cutting off the ball. They're not active defensively, all that stuff. Again, that's a longer rant for another day. But I think generally you make a good point about like getting guys that are ready to go, because that helps that transition. I guess my counter to that would be, it feels like because they didn't have that youth, right? There's no freshman on this team, right? Outside of Braji Gudmundsson, who is like, who knows what his status is moving forward, right? Like, and so like, I think even if they're maybe not to the standard that you would hope, I would have tried to take a flyer on one or two guys that you can either buy into the mentality, the shooting, the athleticism. Find a guy with like, maybe you need like 6 traits that you usually get. Try and find that guy who check marks 3 of the boxes, and then you can see what you have that year. Because at the end of the day, like, not everyone's playing anyways, right? Like there are older guys on this team, and I don't want to single anyone out, but like the roster construction is not perfect, and we're seeing that, with the way playing time is playing out. And I think we'll see that with the transfer portal after the season too, and who stays and who goes and everything. But to
counteract that, John, you, like you said, the guy's not playing, but let's say, hey, you go get a freshman and you bring him in and he doesn't play. So then what? He leaves.
Well, I think the caliber of, I think the difference is the caliber of freshman you're getting is probably not someone that's like can expect immediate playing time. You know what I mean?
Got
like
you.
You're going to get a guy, you go get the guy that knows like, hey, probably not going to play much this year, but I think you can be a real part of this culture moving forward.
Gotcha.
And who knows? Like, listen, we know this happens. Like, guys leave on their own volition through the transfer portal, and sometimes like they
Some
leave
are
because it's
forced
for the
out.
betterment of the team, right? Like it's how it goes these days. And so like if things don't work out, they don't work out. But I would have taken more dart throws on younger guys. And honestly, my expectation moving forward is that Mike Rhodes, and he said this much on the record, I think I actually mentioned it last time we talked, is that he wants to build through high school recruiting, right? Like he wants the core of this team to be guys like they want to get old and stay old, as everyone always says. And so you want guys that are going to be there 3-4 years, and you want them contributing in like year 2, starting in year 3, and like whatever in year 4, like whatever peak they can get to. And I
In
think
my
to do that,
experience, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, I think to do that, like they're kind of a year behind now, right? Because the first freshman class they're taking is going to be freshmen next year, because you're not going to have any of that ton of that youth on that roster outside of Braji, who hasn't seen the court this year, really, right? Like not in any meaningful way, anyways. And so like your building block class is not your first class now; it's your second one. And so like you're a little bit behind the 8 ball on that front. And I wonder if it maybe not sets the program back, but I wonder if things could have been accelerated had this first group been a little bit more. A little bit bigger from a youth standpoint, even if it was like other freshmen at other schools who were leaving, who were maybe going to transfer down a level to like a mid-major school, but you want to take a chance on them and see if they can make it happen.
Yeah. I just wanted to tack on to that too about I do back Rhodes in his if he wants to go through the freshman role in high school players. I do believe that, because I've been on many teams, and the teams that are stayed together the longest are usually the championship level teams, or the teams that are they know each other, they play with each other for long periods of time, they've been in certain situations together a long periods of time, and usually at the end of the day, by the year 4 or year 3, you can see that they continue to grow, they can go deeper in the playoffs, they go deeper in the NCAA tournament. So I think that's the right way to go. I think it's going to be a little old school now compared to the transfer portal now, with everybody just going to grab guys that are older guys. But I think what you do, like I've spoke about it, that in the transfer portal you go get specialists. And I think I've said this earlier, and you go
get the final
specialists.
pieces.
Right. You go get the shooter that you need. Hey, we need a knockdown shooter. Hey, we need a guy that just protects the rim, catch lob dunks, and block shots. We go get that. We need someone that's just, hey, just to settle the team down, just to be a point guard. That's it. So you go get the specialist. But I do think that you build your team, build your culture through the draft. Not through the draft, but basically
through high school recruiting.
But high school recruiting. But at the end of the day, it's a draft now, because now you have to pay these kids to come. So it's the same thing for the most part.
You said it, not me. But it is the reality of it. But no, I think you're right. Like I think the ideal world is that you have 5 guys that are going to be in your rotation, right? Like heading into the off season, maybe 6, and then you add 2 or 3 in the portal, right? Like every year you have 2 or 3 guys that you're like, okay, maybe one of them is a starter, and then 2 of them are bench guys, right? And that kind of fills out your rotation. I think that's the ideal way to do it, because then you have that culture in place, because you have at least over half of your starters are guys coming back who know you, who know your culture, who know what you want. And then the guys coming in can be assimilated more easily and be like, hey, this is the expectation. This is how we do things. And you can be more specific in the guys you go get in the portal, right? And I think, unfortunately for Rhodes and the staff this year, they were not able to be as specific about what they wanted in the portal, right? Because on some level, when you're taking as many guys as they had to take, you need guys, right? Like you need guys on the roster.
You got to get the best available.
Yeah, and you got to do what you can and try and build it out from there. And so I wonder, if next year is going to feel more like year 1, where this is kind of like a year 0, right? Like this is like okay, this is what it looks like in glimpses. Now, not saying they can't take a step to being either an NIT or NCAA tournament team next year. I think assuming Ace Baldwin comes back, they've got a shot to do that because he's that level of player. But I think they need kind of that foundation in place that isn't there yet outside of the coaching staff, right? And I think they need to kind of go through an offseason where they don't have a ton of coaching turnover, where they bring a lot of these guys back and they can kind of go at it again next year and give themselves a real chance to, frankly, to not blow 20-point leads against Minnesota, right? Because they did it. They blew 2 double-digit leads at halftime to Minnesota this year, one at home and one this most recent one on the road. They lose 75-70 to Minnesota in a game that they should have won. Losing to Iowa right before that. I actually don't think we mentioned that at the top because this is like such a big picture thing. But yeah, they lose 2 games on the road, which again, we talk all the time. It's tough to win on the road in the Big Ten, but in a time where they really needed one after losing to Iowa, they had it. It was in their hands, right? Like it was at their fingertips. They were up 20 in the first half. They were hitting everything from 3. And I understand like some of that is like you just got hot from deep and it's going to come back down to earth. It doesn't mean it has to come all the way back down to, hey, they can't score now. And that's kind of what happened. And they were inept on both ends of the court, quite frankly, in the second half. Kind of an inexcusable performance. We'll talk to Mike Rhodes on Thursday. I'm curious to hear his thoughts on it. But this was one of those things, man. This team blows leads like I've never seen before. Like there is this. I saw someone on Twitter. I apologize. Might have been. I don't want to credit someone when I'm not sure who it was. But like, it's a team that's never fully out of a game, and it's also never got a game secured. Like there is up until the dying minutes of the game, you have no idea which way it's going to go. As we learned against Illinois, right? They're down 7 with 35 seconds left and win. Against Minnesota, they're up 20 in the first half and blow it. And they were up double digits the first time against Minnesota too. So I just think having that year-over-year turnover will help with that consistency of like, it's not going to be such a roller coaster ride throughout the season. You can have a baseline set of like, okay, we're going to get 40 minutes out of these guys. It may not be perfect, but it's not going to be downright terrible for the last 20.
Yeah. I was just looking right there just to see if just the wins that they've had in the Big Ten, or have any of them been blowouts, which, in the Big Ten, you don't really have blowouts, but, they had a couple by 10, a couple by 15. I think Rutgers by 15. So, they've been able to do it. Like you said, man, just at Minnesota, you figure that now towards the end of the year. Like I've said it before, like, hey, you know what? We want to be the best team we could be at the end of the year. And for me, that was just unfortunate to see that, hey, be able to give that up right then and there when the time was right. Like I just like you said, the game was in the grass. You already up 20s. What are you gonna do? And then you kind of give that up and just lose by 5 at the end of there with the second to last game of the season, especially when you're trying to get hot, trying to get rolling right into the Big Ten tournament.
No, I think you're right, Tim. I think it's unfortunate that they get to this point and that they're not. I mean, they're not close to peaking, right? Like this is like I don't want to say as bad as it can get, but it's definitely not good. And they're not in a position to capitalize on momentum or anything. But at the same time, you look at last year's team, and if you remember their second to last game, like it was things were going downhill. They had to beat Maryland at the end of the regular season to like give them hope that they could make the NCAA tournament. Now, obviously, they were chasing something different than this team is, but they beat Maryland on that buzzer beater by Cam Winter. They go on to make a run in the Big Ten tournament. The rest is history. Now, that being said, I don't think this team is capable of that kind of deep run in the Big Ten tournament. I think right now it's capable of like catching a team. I don't know if it can do it. Ace Baldwin's playing 40 minutes a night, and then all of a sudden, like he's played 3 games in 3 days, and you're expecting the same out of him on the 4th day. I do think they need to get that Maryland game on Sunday to give themselves, in all likelihood, a bye in the Big Ten tournament, so they're not playing on Wednesday. But I'm curious, what is I don't want to say the ceiling. The ceiling is they can win the Big Ten tournament. The ceiling is that for every team 1 through 14. What is the realistic ceiling you think for this team? Because last year I think we talked and we said they could have gone on a deep run. What is your feeling for this team going into the conference tournament right now with where they're at, with how things are going?
I don't know. I hate to say that I don't know, because you just
don't know
what team. You just don't know what team you're going to get. But I do believe that I think Coach Rhodes is going to have these guys ready for that first matchup, whoever the first matchup might be. I see them getting that win if there's on Wednesday, or if it is on Thursday. I see them getting that win. The only thing that I fear is you go off the past, and the last time they had to play in a tournament with 3 games, 3 different teams. You know what I mean? It didn't fare well for them. So, but I do believe this is a different team than it was back in, what was that?
November.
Back in November.
That was Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Back in November, I think this is a different team. So, I got high hopes for them. I think this team that when you watch them play, they play fun. They play with a lot of energy. They, especially when things are going their way, the way it needs to go. So I see that. And I do believe that they like being underdog. So I do believe when they go into this, and where is it at Minnesota this year? When they go
Yep.
into the arena, there's going to be other teams. There are going to be other teams, other fans, and probably more than Penn State. That
I'm
just
gonna go ahead and break the news now. There aren't gonna be a lot of Penn State fans in Minneapolis.
you never know, man. You never know
I
because
think we know.
I remember I didn't think that we were having the time we went on the run, and then I mean, the farther you get, more people start booking those flights, and then you say, hey,
That's
man,
true.
you got more white up there, okay, it's more up there, it's okay. Then next thing you know, they start creeping down. So, um, you never know, but I do think they prefer and they like being an underdog. So especially when they go in there, especially if they're going against a team they know they're not supposed to beat. We've seen that with them knocking off the two teams in the two top, Illinois and Wisconsin. We've seen that, so I think that helps them out too because when no one believes they're going to win, they somehow come together and fight to be able to pull off upsets that are needed. So I think that's going to help them. And especially in the tournament style, I do believe, like you said, man, I think it'll be tough. 3 games in 3 nights.
4 games and 4 nights to win it all.
4 games
I
and
hate
4
to bring it
nights.
to everyone. That one ain't happening.
As well for especially for guys that are going to be playing multiple minutes or a lot of minutes. But I was there. When we went to the championship, we lost to Ohio State. I think a lot of us and everybody was just playing off just pure adrenaline.
Yep.
And then you're sitting there, was like, hey, you know what? Damn, we won that one. Dang, we beat Wisconsin. Dang, we just beat Michigan State. Shit, why can't we just win the next one? So I think it's kind of just like, hey, you get your rest. Everybody's cheering you on. You seeing everything going on. Like you said, it's more fans coming in. Your family's there. Everybody's like, okay, man, we got a chance. Like this isn't the same team we saw in the beginning of the year. And you roll with the punches. You stick together. Who's in the locker room with you, and then you have your main guys, your stars, and they make big time plays for you in the end to win games that people don't believe that you're going to win. So I think the biggest thing is that you have to get the first one, and once you get the first one, everything else is you just play free because from after the first game, you're a lower seed anyway or a higher seed when you're predicted to lose. So.
Yeah, and I think part of the fan stuff is like you do pick up fans as you go, right? Like if you're playing Purdue, Indiana fans will be rooting for you, right? Like teams to root for lower seeds, all that stuff. And so I think you're right on that front. Like there will be people rooting for them. And honestly, like I don't think they can win 4 straight in the Big Ten tournament. Again, they proved me wrong plenty this year, but I do think they can beat any team in the conference except for Purdue. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I think that it's a whole other animal for them. They've shown, you know what I mean. That's just a brutal matchup for Penn State. But I do think they can beat everyone else in the conference, and so it's about stringing those wins together then, and frankly avoiding Purdue and hoping that you don't play them until either the championship game or late or whatever. Right now they're slated to be in the 8-9 matchup, which unfortunately for them means if they win, they get Purdue. And that's not the ideal outcome. But no, I do think there's a window to win a couple games, 2-3 games even, if everything breaks right. I think the NIT is probably still on the table. I think they almost definitely have to beat Maryland for that to be true entering the tournament still. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if that happens. But this is like my favorite time of year in college basketball, right? Like conference tournaments and smaller conferences are already starting. The big conferences will start next year. Next week. It does feel like later than usual. It feels like everything's like a week later this year because the way the calendar falls. But like the women's basketball tournament is already starting, and we got to watch a lot of history this year with Caitlin Clark at Iowa, who is already entering the WNBA draft. And by the way, I saw people ridiculously saying that she's taking a pay cut to play in the WNBA. Spoiler alert to everyone involved. Those endorsement deals that she is with like State Farm and everyone, they don't go away when she goes pro. She's just also going to get a salary on top of it. Like, I think I've seen some notable people tweeting those things. And it's a little bit ridiculous that to not like, if you're going to say something, like at least understand what you're talking about, I guess. Yeah. But we've seen with Caitlin Clark this year, some of the most absurd performances you've ever seen. And like, frankly, the turnouts at the game she goes to, I think, is one of the coolest things about this, right? Like you see every away game she's at, and now some places like Indiana draws like that regularly because Indiana like loves basketball, but like you don't see that everywhere else. And like she's drawn people to the barn in Minnesota. It's like a sold out crowd. She didn't come to State College this year, otherwise you best believe I would have been there. I actually saw her play here last year, which was it was a really cool experience. But just like she has been incredible this year. Broke the NCAA Division I scoring record, Pete Maravich's old record. Just like, I think something people shouldn't take for granted. Now there are other great women's players coming, like Juju Watkins, and at USC is also excellent. She's a freshman, but like this has been very cool to watch. As she's just been like lighting it up across the country. Kind of like walking triple double. Can do whatever she wants on the court. One of my favorite experiences watching a college athlete, quite frankly, because she's like inevitable. Like no matter what you do, it's going to happen. You kind of just got to deal with it when it comes.
Yeah, just props to her. I mean, she's been phenomenal this year, and even in previous years, to be able to break that record is something that many of us have tried, and I don't know if and none of us had even came close. So again, man, props to her and what she's done for the women's basketball as well. Like, just in her years at Iowa, since she's got there, she's put more and more, people in touch of just watching the game and seeing how great that some of these women athletes are. And, at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for, because, I've seen it. Like I've had friends that are in the WNBA. I've been to WNBA games as well. I used to go to the Penn State women's basketball games as well when I was there. I even used to shoot at night with some of the Penn State women basketball players, man. So like, just to see that the attention is being drawn to just NCAA women's basketball right now is at all time high. I think it's her. I think it's South Carolina. Angel Reese and LSU with South Carolina as coaches.
Don Staley, like arguably like the best basketball coach in the country, period. I don't know. People keep qualifying that with like women. She is like as good as it gets.
Top notch,
from Philly. Like I'm never, never going to turn down.
And even before, when I was there with with Gino and UConn, those teams in UConn, that was something that drew people, because they were like, are they going to lose? Can anybody?
They were a juggernaut, like unstoppable.
So I'm just glad to see that as well. Just people being locked in, and like you said, like you seeing these stars coming out to watch, Caitlin Clark at Iowa. I think Travis Scott was just at the last game, the State Farm guy was there. Everybody's coming out because everybody wants to see, so Maya Moore was there as well. So everybody wants to see how special how special she is as a player. And, I've heard nothing but good things that she is as a human being as well. So as far as the foolishness of people saying about, she should stay in college and make more money, this and this and that. But at the end of the day, your dream as a basketball player is to make it to the highest level.
Yeah.
And the highest level in basketball is the NBA and the WNBA. And the money will be there. The money will come. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I hate to say it, money isn't everything. It is something that comes extra with playing, but money isn't everything, especially when you believe and you really love the game of basketball. So when you love the game of basketball, all that other stuff, it comes on as icing on the cake. So she'll still make that money, and she'll still, like you said, she's going to get more endorsements. She's going to get this. She's going to get a shoe. You know what I mean?
And she also gets a salary. Like Iowa does not pay her a salary. So like, you know what I mean? Like, and like, I think you're 100% right though. Like the women's game is like in such an awesome place right now, and it's continuing to improve. Like I said, some of the best coaches in the world coaching the women's game. I think Don Staley absolutely falls into that category. Mm-hmm. But like you see it, that I think part of that UConn run was like their sheer dominance. Then they get knocked off by South Carolina, and Mississippi State's involved there too. Like, and now you're seeing more parity, which has been so, I think, important. You know what I mean? That it's not that there isn't this dynastic team, right? Because this is true in any sport for me, quite frankly. Like I had less fun watching the NBA when the Warriors were inevitable, right? Because it was like, this is like, what this is building toward.
Damn, John, you didn't like watching me play?
Listen, I was very much watching you play with
Pelicans
the Sixers.
Versus the Warriors. No, the Sixers.
But no, I think the women's game is in a great place now. Basketball is in a great place right now, and a lot of that is the women's game too. You know what I mean? It's really cool to see, and as you said, it's just foolish to like. One, it's first and foremost, like money aside, like you said, it's her decision. Like what she wants out of her career, her life, and everything. Like, that's true in recruiting. That's true in a draft decision, regardless of sport. Like, it's her decision. What she wants is to play in the WNBA and presumably be drafted by the Indiana Fever with the number 1 pick. So,
I got a question for you though. So, does her points that she scores in the Big Ten tournament, does that count?
It's yep. Every point counts toward the record. So she's only going to extend the record. Same with the NCAA tournament. This is so like any tournament games for anyone else previously to all of their points. This is across. You know what I mean? Regular season, and everything. And frankly, she could have made this record unreachable had she used her COVID year. I'm kind of glad she didn't, because LeBron is making the points record unreachable in the NBA. So we're never going to see that broken. I kind of like when records get broken, because you see that new person come up and do it, and the distance she would have put.
But just 40, think about 000? It. You say unreachable, and I do believe bronze is crazy, because I don't think guys are going to play that long and be.
Well,
so
that's
no
the
one's
thing.
going to come in
20
and play
years
in that long
at that level,
and starting as early as he did to be the guy. But again, the record before, no one said he was going to break. Nobody could break it.
True.
You know what I mean? No one said that Caitlin Clark would be able to break a record. So they get broken by special human beings, special players. That, you know what I mean? Sometimes years fall in their pocket. Like you said, a COVID year, you know what I mean, that she could have extended and make it farther. Or even Bron, someone like him just comes in and, you know, no one's ever seen, starts at 18 and finishes, you know, he'll still continue to push it. Probably play till another 3 years, and you know we're gonna sit there and just be like, when he's done, you be like, man, that's just greatness. And for college women's basketball, you say the same thing. Caitlin Clark is greatness. You know, we won't see someone like her for a while. That doesn't discredit a lot of those other women coming up or college basketball players coming up, but you know, in the times, it's like, who's gonna stay in college that long?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who's going to play that long? Who's going to have the ball in their hands to be free enough to be able to say, I'm just this type of scorer that I can just score, you know, as soon as I get on touch foot on campus.
Well, and that's like the thing with LeBron, like even to find a player that we all thought could reach his level, it took his entire career essentially for Victor Wembanyama to be a thing. You know what I mean? Like LeBron's whole career, everyone was looking for the next LeBron or that level player. Wemby's,
and there were names that said, hey, this is the next LeBron. That just
and it never got close. Like it never panned out. I think Wemby is like the first one. It's like, okay, like this is probably the next best player in the NBA for 15 years or whatever. But no, I think Caitlin Clark has a chance to do that too, right? Like to be that kind of, she's iconic, right? Like it's not, it transcends the sport on some level. You know, with like you're there to see the show because you know how incredible she is. Like it's one of those things, again, to compare to LeBron, like you just got tickets when LeBron was in town, no matter how bad the team was he was playing against, because you wanted to see him. It doesn't matter.
The tickets were expensive, no matter what.
Right. Right. They were playing. It was like an NBA Finals game you were paying for, and that's what it's like to go see Caitlin Clark, because she's iconic. She's transcendent and goes beyond the sport.
Do they put a statue outside of Iowa for it?
Listen, the only statue I'm currently worried about is Jason Kelsey's statue outside of the Lincoln Financial Field. And whenever that happens,
what about the Allen Iverson statue they're putting up?
Yeah, but that one's already gone up. I don't have to fight that fight anymore.
Yeah,
so I'm good with that one. Yeah, we don't. Listen, Embiid will get his statue too down the road. I'm not worried about that one.
You think?
Either. Yeah, for sure. He's going to go down as the best.
With no championship?
Don't do that to me.
Well, if he wins a championship,
not yet. Even
AI didn't win a championship.
Yeah, well, that's.
Yeah, he did. Or no, he didn't.
No, he didn't. He made the finals in 01. It just felt like he won it because they won one game against that Lakers team, and and it felt like winning a title because that was the step over game. But no, I think like, you know, there's like, she is that in that pantheon of greatness, right? Like that group of athletes who can kind of do it like no one else can. And that's where I think this is a good place to leave it. And I'm going to say something that I'm not giving you a chance to respond just in case you disagree, but this is why, like, she is arguably the greatest of all time. And it is why LeBron is the greatest basketball player of all time. But I think that's a good place to leave it. Tim and
I get that. Hold on, John. I get this question. I get this questions all the time. Like even today, one of the trainers here in France asked me, he was like, man, who's your GOAT, your greatest of all time? And I just tell him, like, my greatest of all time is not LeBron. It's not Jordan. It's not Kobe. Like for me, like again, it could be wrong, but my personal opinion, for me as a small guard, I'm sure you could think of it. Like when I watched this person play, he was the greatest of all time, and I just mentioned him.
I assume it's AI. Yeah.
Listen, like for me, that was my greatest. Like I thought AI could do no wrong.
That's fair.
But don't get me wrong.
It's incorrect, but it's fair.
Yeah, right. Again, that's my personal opinion. Of course,
it's like when Brandon Miller. Listen, it's like when Brandon
numbers
Miller
are just.
Paul George is the GOAT, and like I love Paul George, but that's wrong. Like it's incorrect.
You can't say that. Yeah. Again, but that's his personal opinion. Let me change that. He's not the greatest of all time, but he's my best player. When I look up and say, hey, like, who's the best player in my eyes, I'm going with AI. Like, don't get me wrong, LeBron, he's great on, off the court. He's broken all the records. If you want to put him in a GOAT conversation, he's there.
I don't have to put him in it.
Kobe is there. Will there. All those guys are there, and you can't knock them and say they're not. You know what I mean? But my best player when growing up and even now, like, it would be AI. So,
yeah, I loved AI growing up, no doubt, 100%. But now LeBron is the GOAT. He is the best player of all time, and that's a good place to leave it. We will be back to preview the Big Ten tournament next week. You can find Tim on Twitter at TimFrase23. You can find me on Twitter at John Sauber. We usually post these links, post some clips from these episodes if you'd like to catch us there. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.